My name is Lucy, and I graduated from college with a degree in computer programming. Unlike most of my classmates who were scrambling to find jobs after graduation, I already had mine secured. During my third year, I got an offer from Soft Tech Solutions, a mid-sized software company that liked my work during a summer internship. The job offer came with a pretty decent salary, enough that I could have moved into my own place right after graduation. But I didn't. "Lucy, we were hoping you might consider staying with us a bit longer," Mom said one evening as we sat around our dining table. Dad nodded beside her, looking slightly embarrassed. "What do you mean?" "I thought you'd be happy to finally have the house to yourselves," I replied, confused by their request. Dad cleared his throat. "Well, sweetheart, the truth is, we're having trouble keeping up with all the bills these days. Your mother and I aren't getting any younger, and our expenses keep going up. If you stayed," Mom added quickly, "and maybe contributed a little to the household, it would really help us out." I looked at their worried faces. These were the people who raised me, who put me through college. Despite the fact that I'd been dreaming about my own place for years, I couldn't say no. "How much would help?" I asked. The relief on their faces was immediate. "Maybe $1,000 a month," Dad suggested tentatively, "for bills and groceries." And just like that, I became the breadwinner for my parents at 22 years old. I kept the rest of my salary in my savings account, watching it grow steadily each month. I didn't spend much on myself, just the basics and occasional small treats. Why waste money on things I didn't need? My sister Olivia had a completely different philosophy about money. She was 7 years older than me, married to her college sweetheart James, and had a 7-year-old son named Ethan. They lived in a fancy rented apartment across town and lived like they were swimming in cash, even though they weren't. "Oh my God, Lucy, are you seriously wearing that shirt again?" Olivia said during one of her Sunday visits. She was sprawled on our parents' couch, scrolling through her phone while James and Dad watched football and Mom played with Ethan. I looked down at my plain blue t-shirt. "What's wrong with it?" She rolled her eyes dramatically. "I saw you wearing it in your Facebook photos from last year. Don't you ever buy new clothes?" "The new Stella McCartney line dropped weeks ago." "I don't need new clothes, these ones work fine," I replied, trying not to let her get under my skin. "This is why you're still single," she sighed, as if my lack of designer clothing was some kind of character flaw. "No guy wants a girl who looks like she shops at Goodwill." I bit my tongue instead of pointing out that while I had a growing savings account, she and James were living paycheck to paycheck despite his well-paying job. Olivia worked part-time at a boutique, mostly to fight boredom as she put it, but their combined income disappeared as quickly as it came in: vacations, restaurants, clothes, and whatever else caught their fancy that week. "Hey, Lucy," Olivia said later that same day, cornering me in the kitchen while I was doing dishes. Her voice had shifted from mocking to sweet. "Can I borrow $200? There's this dress I've been eyeing, and I'm a little short this month." I sighed. This wasn't the first time, and it wouldn't be the last. "Sure," I said, drying my hands on a towel. "You're the best." She gave me a quick hug. "This is why you're my favorite sister." "I'm your only sister," I reminded her, but she was already texting someone, probably telling them she could afford the dress after all. When I wasn't at my day job, I spent most evenings working on a side project, a home security system app that I believed could revolutionize how people monitored their homes. It would integrate with existing camera systems but add intelligent alerts and user-friendly controls that the current market was missing. "Lucy, it's almost midnight. Why are you still on that computer?" Mom complained, standing in my doorway in her robe. "You're running up our electricity bill." "Sorry, Mom, just finishing something up," I said, not looking away from my screen. "All she does is play those stupid games," I heard Dad tell Mom as they walked back to their bedroom. "No wonder she can't find a boyfriend." I didn't bother correcting them. They wouldn't understand what I was working on anyway, and I didn't have the energy to explain. Sometimes it was easier to let people believe what they wanted to believe. Little did I know that my quiet life of saving money and secretly coding was about to be turned upside down in ways I couldn't imagine. The first sign of trouble came on a Tuesday evening when I returned from work to find our driveway full of cars and the front door propped open with a box. I walked into chaos. The living room was filled with stacked boxes, suitcases, and random furniture. My sister was directing our parents like they were moving company employees. "What's going on?" I asked, standing frozen in the doorway. "Are you moving in?" James appeared from the hallway, looking defeated in a way I'd never seen before. His usually competent posture was slumped, his designer clothes wrinkled. "James lost his job," Olivia announced before he could speak. "Can you believe how unfairly they treated him? His own friend betrayed him." "What happened?" I asked, looking at James. He couldn't meet my eyes. "It's complicated, creative accounting, they called it." "He was borrowing company money," Olivia explained defensively. "But he was going to pay it all back. The director, who was supposed to be his friend, found out during an audit and went ballistic." "You mean he was stealing?" I asked carefully. The room went silent, my parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. "That's a horrible thing to say," Olivia snapped. "His friend asked for the money back and for James to resign." "That seems fair, considering," I started. "Fair? Real friends don't do that to each other," Olivia interrupted, her voice rising. "They understand when you're in a tight spot." I dropped the subject, seeing that logic wasn't welcome in this conversation. Instead, I watched in silence as my sister commandeered my parents' house like she owned it, ordering everyone around while contributing nothing. At dinner, Mom announced that Olivia, James, and Ethan would be staying just until they get back on their feet. I nodded and silently prepared myself for what I knew was coming, a nightmare of epic proportions. The nightmare I predicted began almost immediately. My quiet, orderly life crumbled under the chaos of having Olivia's family in the house. James found a new job within 2 weeks, but as he complained loudly to anyone who would listen, it paid half of what he made before. Olivia kept her part-time job at the boutique, working just enough hours to claim she was contributing without actually helping much with their finances. "This chicken is so dry," Olivia complained at dinner one night, pushing her plate away. "Mom, don't you know how to use seasoning? We used to eat at Bellissimo's every Thursday, and their food was amazing." Instead of defending her cooking or telling Olivia to make her own dinner, Mom just nodded apologetically. "I'm sorry, dear, I'll try to do better next time." I stabbed at my chicken, which was perfectly fine, and kept my mouth shut. The dynamic in the house had shifted dramatically. Somehow, Olivia had become the center of everyone's attention and concern. Her problems were everyone's problems. Her complaints were valid grievances that needed immediate addressing. And I was just there. The ATM machine in the corner who paid the bills. One evening, I was working late on my security app when Olivia barged into my room without knocking. "I need to borrow $300, she announced, not even bothering with her usual fake sweetness. "Ethan needs new shoes, and we want to take him to the amusement park this weekend. He's been so upset since we moved here." "Didn't James just get paid?" I asked. "We have other expenses," she snapped. "Are you going to help or not?" I relented that time, but when she asked again the following week, I finally pushed back. "Maybe you should consider working full-time," I suggested at dinner, after she'd asked me for money in front of everyone, clearly thinking I wouldn't say no with an audience. "The boutique is hiring," I saw the sign in their window. Olivia's face turned red. "I can't believe how cruel you are. You know I need to be available for Ethan after school." "Mom and Dad are always here," I pointed out. "They could watch him for a couple of hours." "That's not the point," she shouted, throwing her napkin down and storming out of the room. James followed after giving me a dirty look. Mom shook her head at me. "Lucy, how could you be so heartless? Your sister is going through a difficult time." "We're all going through a difficult time," I muttered, but no one was listening. Olivia didn't speak to me for a week after that, which was actually a relief. I used the quiet time to finish my security app. After months of late nights and weekends hunched over my keyboard, it was finally ready to show to someone. "This is incredible," my boss, Mark, said as I demonstrated the app's features in his office. His eyes widened as I showed him how it could detect specific movements, distinguish between humans and animals, and send customized alerts. The user interface is so intuitive. And these algorithms, did you develop all this yourself? I nodded, trying not to look too proud. It's been my side project for a while. Mark leaned back in his chair, studying me with new respect. Lucy, this could completely disrupt the home security market. Our company could dominate if we owned this. My heart raced. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. I'm prepared to offer you $500,000 for full ownership, plus a percentage of future sales, he said. What do you think? I tried to keep my expression neutral despite the adrenaline rushing through me. $500,000 plus royalties? It was more than I'd dreamed of. That sounds fair, I managed to say, as if I negotiated six-figure deals every day. We shook hands, and I walked out of his office in a daze. I had just become wealthy overnight, but as I drove home, I made a decision: I wouldn't tell my family. If they knew, the money would disappear into Olivia's shopping sprees or my parents' enabling of her lifestyle. This was my chance for freedom, and I wasn't going to waste it. That evening, I contacted a realtor friend, Sarah, who had helped one of my colleagues find an apartment. I need a place of my own, I told her over the phone, speaking quietly from my car in the driveway. I want to buy an apartment close to work, ready to move in quickly. Can you help? Absolutely, I have a few places in mind already. Let's meet tomorrow after you finish work. When I entered the house, I found everyone gathered in the living room, an unusual sight for a weeknight. They stopped talking as soon as I walked in, their expressions a mix of determination and awkwardness. Lucy, we need to talk to you, Mom said, patting the space beside her on the sofa. I sat down cautiously. What's up? Dad cleared his throat. We've been looking at our expenses, and, well, things are getting tight. With 5 adults and a child in the house, the utility bills have gone way up. And groceries, you wouldn't believe how much food a growing boy needs. What your father is trying to say, Mom continued, is that we were hoping you might be able to contribute a bit more to the household expenses. The $1,000 you've been giving us just isn't covering everything anymore. I looked around the room. My parents looked embarrassed but hopeful. Olivia was examining her manicure, pretending this wasn't her idea, though I knew it was. James at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. Are Olivia and James contributing anything? I asked. My parents exchanged glances. Well, they're in a difficult position right now, Mom said softly. And you're single, with no dependents. You can afford to help a little more. I took a deep breath, counting to 10 in my head. How much more? We were thinking maybe $2,000 a month, Dad suggested. I wanted to laugh, or cry, or scream. Instead, I just nodded. Fine, starting this month. Olivia finally looked up, a small smile playing on her lips. She thought she'd won. Little did she know that her victory would be short-lived. 3 days later, I met Sarah at a beautiful apartment complex 10 minutes from my office. The one-bedroom unit she showed me was perfect, modern, bright, and on the top floor with a small balcony. I used part of the money I'd received from selling my application to buy it outright, signing the papers that day. While I was secretly furnishing my new apartment, I noticed something strange happening at my parents' house. Mom, Dad, and Olivia kept exchanging these weird looks during dinner, like they were all in on some secret plan. James mostly kept his head down, focusing on his food and occasionally helping Ethan cut his meat. Something was definitely up, but I couldn't figure out what. I didn't have to wait long to find out. 2 days later, I came home from work to find a pile of my belongings stacked in the hallway. My books, clothes, laptop, and even my childhood stuffed bear were all dumped unceremoniously in a heap. What the hell, I muttered, dropping my bag and heading straight to my bedroom. Except it wasn't my bedroom anymore. Ethan was sitting on my bed, now covered with superhero sheets, playing a video game. The walls that had once held my programming certificates now displayed posters of cartoon characters. My desk where I'd created my app was gone, replaced by a child-sized table covered in crayons and action figures. Aunt Lucy, Ethan said, looking up from his game. Look at my new room, isn't it cool? Before I could answer, Olivia appeared in the doorway behind me. Oh, you're home, she said, not sounding surprised at all. What's going on? I asked, my voice deadly calm despite the rage building inside me. We moved Ethan into your room, she said with a shrug, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. He needs more space for his toys and schoolwork. And where exactly am I supposed to sleep? I asked. Mom appeared behind Olivia, wringing her hands nervously. Lucy, dear, we thought since you're hardly ever home anyway, always at work or on that computer, you wouldn't mind using the sofa in the living room. I looked from Mom to Olivia, who wasn't even trying to hide her smug satisfaction. So you moved all my things without asking me? We knew you'd make a fuss if we asked, Olivia said, and Ethan really needed the space. His old room was barely bigger than a closet. Speaking of his old room, why can't I use that? I asked. Olivia and Mom exchanged another of those looks. Well, Mom said hesitantly, we thought Olivia could use a dressing room. You know how many clothes she has, and there's just no space in her and James's room for all of them. I stared at them, momentarily speechless. They had kicked me out of my bedroom, the room I'd had since childhood, the room I was essentially paying for with my $2,000 monthly contribution, to make a dressing room for my sister? The sister who wasn't contributing a dime to the household? I looked at her designer outfit, then at my pile of belongings in the hall, and something inside me snapped. But instead of screaming or crying like they probably expected, I just shrugged. You know what? That's fine, I said calmly. I won't be sleeping on the sofa because I'll be sleeping in my own apartment. Olivia laughed. Right, your imaginary apartment. Give it up, Lucy, we all know you don't have an apartment. I do, actually, I replied, I bought it last week. I was going to tell you all this weekend, but it seems you've made the decision easier for me. Mom and Olivia stared at me like I'd grown a second head. You bought an apartment? Mom asked. How? With what money? That doesn't matter, I said, turning to head downstairs. What matters is that I'm moving out, today. I went down to the living room and called a moving company, booking their first available slot, which happened to be early tomorrow morning. Then I called my boss to request a day off. Throughout all of this, my family hovered nearby, their expressions ranging from disbelief to growing concern. Lucy, you can't be serious, Dad said, finally joining the conversation after coming in from the garage. I'm completely serious, I replied, ending my call with the movers. They'll be here at 7 a.m. tomorrow to get my things. But we need to talk about this, Mom exclaimed. If you're upset about the room, we can figure something out. Maybe Ethan can share with us for a while, or... It's not about the room, I interrupted, it's about respect and boundaries. And the fact that I pay $2,000 a month to live here, and you still treat me like I'm less important than everyone else in this house. Olivia, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly spoke up. Wait, you actually bought an apartment? With what money? You're just a junior developer. I didn't answer her directly. I'm going to pack what's left of my things now, I said, walking past them toward the pile in the hallway. The next morning, the movers arrived at 7 a.m. sharp. I directed them to the pile of belongings in the hallway, which had grown as I'd gathered the rest of my stuff from around the house. My family watched in stunned silence as the men carried box after box out to the truck. Where exactly is this apartment? Dad finally asked as I was doing a final check to make sure I hadn't forgotten anything. Near my office, I said vaguely. How much did it cost? Olivia demanded, and how did you afford it? I turned to face my family, who were all standing in the living room watching me like I was performing some strange ritual they didn't understand. That's not really any of your business. We're your family, Mom said, sounding hurt. Of course it's our business. Family works both ways, Mom, I replied. And for a long time, it's only gone one way in this house. What does that mean? Olivia asked defensively. It means I'm done being everyone's ATM, I said. I'm done giving money that's never appreciated, never enough, and never used responsibly. So you're abandoning us? Mom asked, tears welling in her eyes. What about the bills, the groceries? What about them? I asked. Olivia and James are adults with jobs. Let them contribute for a change. We can barely afford our own expenses, Olivia protested. Then maybe you should reconsider your spending habits, I suggested. Olivia's face reddened. You know what? I think you should give us your apartment. We need it more than you do. We have a child. I couldn't help it, I laughed. The absolute audacity was almost impressive. No, Olivia, I'm not giving you my apartment. I'm not giving you anything anymore. Miss, one of the movers appeared in the doorway. We've loaded everything. Are you ready to go? I nodded, picking up my purse. I'm ready. Lucy, please, Mom tried one last time, don't leave like this. I'll call you in a few days, I said, not making any promises beyond that. Goodbye. I followed the moving truck to my new apartment, a sense of liberation growing with every mile that separated me from my family's house. For the first time in my adult life, I was putting myself first. And it felt surprisingly good. The next few days were a blur of unpacking, arranging furniture deliveries, and setting up utilities. I kept my phone off most of the time, knowing it would be flooded with messages from my family. When I finally turned it on, I was right, dozens of missed calls and text messages, ranging from angry to pleading to guilt-tripping. After a week of silence, I decided to visit my parents' house. I wanted to have a calm, reasonable conversation about boundaries and expectations. When I pulled into the driveway that Saturday morning, I could see the curtains twitch. They'd been watching for me. I barely made it to the door before it swung open. Mom pulled me into a tight hug. Lucy, thank goodness you came back, she said, relief washing over her face. We'd been so worried. Dad appeared behind her, looking simultaneously happy and uncomfortable. Olivia and James were already seated in the living room, with Ethan playing on the floor. I'm not moving back, I said immediately, before they could get the wrong idea. I just came to talk. We understand, Mom said, pulling me inside. We'd been doing a lot of thinking too. I doubted that, but I sat down anyway. Lucy, Dad began, we know we made a mistake. Your room is yours again whenever you want it. Ethan moved back to his old room. And I didn't make a dressing room, Olivia added quickly. I can fit my clothes in our bedroom. I looked at their eager faces. I appreciate that, but I'm happy in my new place. But we miss you, Mom said, and we need you. There it was, the real reason for their sudden change of heart. You need my money, I corrected her gently. No one denied it. We could work something out, Olivia suggested. You could keep your apartment, but maybe still help us with expenses? Or we could move into your apartment and you could have this house again? I almost laughed at her audacity. No, Olivia, I'm not giving you my apartment or my money. But that's not fair, she exclaimed. You're so selfish. How did you even afford an apartment anyway? You must have been hiding money from us for years. I sold an app one developed, I said simply. The security program I was working on at night, the one you all thought was me playing video games. My boss bought it for $500,000 plus royalties. The silence that followed was deafening. $500,000, James finally whispered. Mom looked faint. Why didn't you tell us? Because I knew what would happen, I replied honestly. You would have found reasons why you deserved that money more than me. No one could argue with that. So you're just abandoning us? Olivia asked dramatically. After everything we've done for you? I stood up. What exactly have you done for me, Olivia? Borrow money you never repay? Criticize my clothes? Move my things without asking? She had no answer. I'll always be your daughter and your sister, I said, looking at each of them. But I won't be your bank anymore. As I walked out the door, I heard them calling me ungrateful, selfish, heartless. But for the first time, those words didn't hurt. 6 months have passed since then. I haven't spoken to my family. They've tried reaching out, but always with financial requests disguised as reconciliation. Through mutual friends, I've heard they're still living together, still complaining about money, and now about my abandonment. Meanwhile, I'm thriving. My apartment is perfect, my career is advancing rapidly, and the royalties from my app are steadily accumulating. I've started traveling, bought some nice clothes, though still nothing Olivia would approve of, and even began dating someone who appreciates my practical nature. Sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing. But then I remember how they treated me, not as a family member to be respected, but as a resource to be used. And I know that walking away wasn't selfish, it was self-preservation.